Hi, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about pronoun case. When it comes to grammar, I think all of us have a certain issue or error that we struggle with when we write. And at least for me, as a writer, the one grammatical issue that I've always found the toughest is choosing the correct pronoun case. So we'll talk about what that means in a second. Let's first remind ourselves that a pronoun is a word that replaces a noun in a sentence, or it can replace another pronoun. So again, earlier in this activity, we were talking about pronouns and antecedents. An antecedent is that word that the pronoun is referring to. So when it comes to pronoun case, the most important thing to be aware of is that the pronoun that you choose is always going to depend on what that antecedent is doing in the sentence. In other words, that word that you're replacing, what is its job in the sentence? Because if you can figure that out, then that will allow you to choose the correct pronoun. So, essentially this word case, when I say pronoun case just means role or job. So a major error that I see a lot, and one that I've made myself as a writer, is putting pronouns in the wrong case, having them act in a particular way that they're not supposed to, right? So you'll see further down in this activity in a little bit, I describe the difference between the three main types of pronouns that you'll have to choose from when you're writing. And these are subject pronouns, object pronouns, and possessive pronouns. So to understand really what that means, I have just a very simple example here at the top of the page. I have this simple sentence, the boy kicked the ball. So we've talked about subjects and verbs before in earlier activities. But if we look at this sentence here, the beginning, we have the boy. He's the subject of the sentence. He's the one doing something, right? The boy kicked. That's our verb. That's what he's doing. And like I've talked about before, in order for something to be a sentence, it absolutely has to have those two parts, a subject and a verb. Sometimes when you write a sentence, there will be more after your subject and verb. There doesn't have to be, but in most cases there will be. So if you see a person, place, thing after your subject and verb, that thing is going to be what's called the object of the sentence. So whereas the boy is the person performing this action, is kicking, the ball is the object that's receiving the action. It's the thing that's being kicked. So the thing is, these two words play different roles in the sentence. This is the thing doing something. This is the thing that's being acted upon, right? So this is important to understand when you're trying to understand what subject, object, and possessive pronouns are, right? So again, you'll see underneath this video, but subject pronouns are going to be these pronouns that are acting as the subject of a sentence. It's going to be these pronouns like I, we, he, she, that sort of thing. Whereas object pronouns are going to be pronouns that take the place of an object in the sentence. So they're going to be words like me, us, him, her. So this matters because if you're using the wrong type of pronoun, the sentence is going to sound weird or wrong. So this sentence here, if I just change it a little bit, I wouldn't say something like me kicked the ball. That doesn't sound right because, again, I would be using an object pronoun when really I need a subject pronoun here. So I would say I kicked the ball, right? Same thing if I change the ball to a person, right? I wouldn't say I kicked she, right? Because again, that she is a subject pronoun. It should only be used in the subject of a sentence. I would say I kicked her or him. I'd use that object pronoun instead, right? When it comes to possessive pronouns, these are going to be pronouns that show ownership, and sometimes they'll be followed by some named object, sometimes not, right? So if I said, the boy kicked my ball, my would be the possessive pronoun. It's showing ownership, who the ball belongs to. But I could say something like, the ball was mine. That pronoun mine, again, is replacing the ball, really, and it's saying who it belongs to, right? So again, it's a matter of sort of learning what these three types of pronouns are and just making sure that you're using the correct one for what its job is in the sentence, right? So again, this is kind of explained below this video, but I did want to clarify a few things because this is tricky. So one thing that's mentioned, and again, you'll see a version of this below, but what sometimes ends up being tricky is what are called subject complements. I have that here at the bottom. So a subject complement, you've probably heard referred to by another term, either a linking verb or a helping verb, right? So this word complements, obviously it's not like say something nice about somebody, how we usually use the word compliment. It's this complement with an E, which means to help out, right? So kind of a tricky situation when you're choosing a pronoun is you have to consider whether there's a subject complement in that sentence, because if so, it might change the pronoun that you use. So again, a subject complement is going to be one of these verbs that doesn't necessarily look like some sort of action, right? So if I say kick, we can imagine what that looks like, right? But subject complements are words like be or seem, become, appear, all that stuff, right? So one of the reasons why this is a little bit tricky is because a lot of times people forget that the verb be, it's probably the most tricky verb in the English language. The forms of the word be don't look anything like be. So I put a list of them here, right? It's these words like I am, you are, he, she, it is, etc., right? And then these are the forms of be in the past tense. I was, you were, he, she, it was. Notice none of them contain be, right? You don't say I be, you be, he, she, it, been, or anything like that, right? So this leads people to sometimes use the wrong pronouns because they're not recognizing that they actually have a helping verb in the sentence. So I have this same sentence below in the activity here, but I wanted to explain it a little bit more. So a lot of times you'll see people write a sentence like this and say, Lee was not the one who broke the code, it was me. And part of the reason is that kind of sounds right. A lot of the reason why we make these types of errors is because we hear them wrong every day in speech. It's not good to always write exactly the way that you hear things. I would say trust your brain rather than trusting your ear all the time. If it sounds weird, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It might, but not all the time. So again, a lot of times you'll see people say, it was me here. But like we said, we have this helping verb was, like I have right here. This is a helping verb. So instead of using me here, when you have a helping verb, a subject complement, you want to use the subject pronoun instead, right? So the correct way, even though it might sound a little strange, to write this sentence would be, Lee was not the one who broke the code, it was I. Because really what you're saying, you wouldn't include this in the sentence, but you would really be saying, it was I who broke it, right? And notice that I is sort of the subject of a new sentence. I was the one who broke it, right? So again, this ends up being a little bit tricky. Just watch out if you have these subject complements. You'll see below that if you don't like the way that sounds, if it sounds too strange, you can completely kind of rewrite the sentence so that you avoid having to make that choice. Again, technically, this would be the correct way to write this sentence. Let's look at another situation. Again, all these are kind of explained a little bit below as well. But if you have what's called a compound structure, all that means is joining two words together with some other word. Usually, a compound structure is two words joined together by the word and. Not always. It might be joined together with or something else. But most of the time, we're talking about joining words together with and. So the point is, when you're joining two words together, again, it depends on whether those words are acting as the subject of the sentence or whether they're acting as the object. You would use different pronouns depending on what they're trying to do. So look at these two examples that I have right here. So in the first sentence, I would say, he and I never had any secrets. And I would use these pronouns because they're the subject, both of them. It's not just he, but he and I never had any secrets. Where it gets a little bit more tricky is when you have these words and I have to make this decision more toward the end of the sentence, right? So in this sentence, the subject really is secrets. You're saying secrets were never between these two people. So since you already have a subject and your verb, this stuff that comes after, these are going to be objects, right? So that means you need to use the object pronouns. So you would say there were never any secrets between him and me. You wouldn't say there were never any secrets between he and I. Again, we hear that used incorrectly all the time in speech. But again, you can't always trust your ear. Even if it kind of sounds right, you need to think back to the rule. If it's being used as an object in the sentence, you need to use those object pronouns here. A couple other things. So when you're making a comparison between two things, so specifically using words like than or as, it kind of depends on what your meaning is. You would use different pronouns depending on what you actually mean. So here are two versions of the same sentence, but they're being used in two different ways. So if I said he likes baseball more than me, what I'm really saying if I use that me is he likes the sport of baseball more than he likes me as a person, right? That's kind of mean, but maybe that's how somebody feels, right? But if I say he likes baseball more than I, what I'm really saying is he likes baseball more than I like baseball. Probably 9 times out of 10, this is what someone means when they're trying to say this sentence. But again, a lot of people will say he likes baseball more than me when they're trying to really say this, that he likes baseball more than I like baseball. And again, that sentence sounds kind of weird. He likes baseball more than I. But again, sometimes what helps to make it sound a little less strange is to just complete the rest of the sentence. Maybe you'd say something like, he likes baseball more than I do, right? That sounds a little bit better. But again, technically, if you're using these words than or as in your sentence, you have to really ask yourself, what am I trying to say in the sentence? Because that pronoun will probably change. So last thing here, when you're using infinitives, an infinitive is the word to plus a verb, to sing, to dance, to write, any of that stuff. So when you're using an infinitive in a sentence, usually if you have a pronoun either before or after that infinitive, you're going to use the object case only instead of the subject case. And again, it fits with the rule that we had before. So if we look at this sentence, the cat wanted me to pet her. We have a subject, the cat, and we have this verb, wanted, right? So stuff that comes after the subject and the verb, they're going to be treated as objects, right? So I would use these object pronouns, me and her. I wouldn't say the cat wanted I to pet she. Again, that doesn't sound right to our ear, and it doesn't fit with our definition of which pronoun you should use. So again, just be careful when you're making these choices in your writing. I think it can be tough sometimes.